Okay, and welcome to the first weekly, that's right, weekly historical computerists as told by Phasma.
All right, we're off to a good start already.
Week-
It's probably not going to be weekly. Yeah, whatever. And we're going to call it computation history rather than historical computerists.
Whatever, I think my name's better.
Yeah, whatever.
Okay, so why are we doing it today? What is today?
Today is Ada Lovelace Day.
Ada Lovelace. Now
Yes.
that is an awesome name.
Well, that wasn't her original name. It was Augusta Ada King, Countess of Lovelace.
I can imagine why they renamed her Ada Lovelace.
Yeah, well, interestingly, she actually, she kind of wasn't really famous for that, well, for most of the time between when she lived and now. For about 200 odd years, she was kind of basically nobody really knew about it, and then there's been sort of renewed interest in the last few years.
Oh. So what did she do? What makes her famous? Why is Lovelace Day a thing?
Well, traditionally she's famous because people consider her the first computer programmer, which is, I'm not sure that's exactly true. I'll give you some background on that in a minute, but the main thing that she did was she had this massive conceptual leap in how a computing machine could be used to actually do something other than work out numbers.
Now, you said leap. What did they call it?
Lovelace's leap.
That's pretty cool. Makes it sound like a lovers jumping off a cliff sort of thing. But carry on.
See, I had it more like, I don't know, some sort of weird like subspace jump thing. Yep, I'm geeky.
Well, that was like the bleeding edge of technology back in 1815. But that's the other thing that when you were talking to me earlier, I was like, 1815. Wait a minute, Lovelace is a girl?
In 1815. Yeah, she's quite unusual in that she was a very, very good mathematician. And around that sort of time, it was pretty rare to have female scholars and even more so mathematicians.
Hey, try going to secondary school now. It's quite rare to get mathematicians as it is. Yeah, burn.
That's very true. Well, I don't know, maybe. Anyway, yeah, so she was born in 1815, and she was actually the daughter of a guy called Lord Byron, who is quite famous for his antics. He was a poet in the day, and anyway, this isn't about him. She was homeschooled, and her mother was quite interested in maths as well. And basically, her mother married, I forget the person's name, but basically pretty much royalty. And so Ada Lovelace was homeschooled in quite a lot of topics around maths and science and so on, and she really enjoyed maths. At one point then, she was introduced to Charles Babbage.
Big up the Babbage. Shout out to Charles Babbage.
Wow.
What? He's that guy in the end of Hackers, right? He was the Japanese guy on the plane, yeah?
The Plague.
Yeah, Mr. the Plague.
Yeah. Sorry, Mr. the Plague. Yeah.
No, I thought that in Hackers was a great reference to Charles Babbage.
Well, that was pretty cool. We could actually there are a few other references. Should we go off on a tangent here?
I don't know how long do you want this to be.
Let's go off on a tangent.
Tangent.
There are quite a few references. There's like, for example, Emmanuel Goldstein, the name for a serial killer, was a guy who actually was a technical consultant on the film, and he was the editor and I think founder of 2600 magazine, which is a magazine about sort of old school hacking and phreaking and so on. And
Emmanuel Goldstein is also a character from
1984. Yeah, which is where the other one took his name from. So there we go. That's enough Hackers trivia for now.
We'll be back with more, don't worry.
Or like a whole reading of the script or something. No, don't even. No, you can
do another audio thing, and it'll be a spoiler cast of Hackers. If you haven't seen it yet, we'll ruin it for you. Anyway, back to Lovelace and Lovelace's leap.
Okay, so so she met Babbage, and Babbage at the time was working on designs for a couple of machines. The first one that he designed was called the difference engine, which is basically a very early mechanical calculator. He followed that up with another one called the analytical engine, which was more of a general purpose computer. So the mechanical calculator, the difference engine, was quite limited in what it could do, but the analytical engine could do a lot more. It was a lot more flexible. It could actually be programmed rather than just calculate numbers straight off. This is sort of quite an interesting in that they never actually got built because sort of at the time it was quite difficult to build such things. They didn't have the precision and so on that we do now.
The size of a house.
It was pretty big. There's actually a project in place at the minute called Plan 28, I think it is.
Is that the one they're rebuilding it?
Yep, rebuilding the analytical engine. It's going to be, I think, on display in the National Science Museum in London once it's done. It's going to take a few years to do. It's quite a lot of work, but
okay, so we can plan a trip to London in a couple of years.
Yeah. So that was sort of what Babbage was working on at the time, and because Lovelace sort of got to know Babbage and started working with him, and sort of working with the analytical engine and what could be done, and this is where first of all the whole first program I think came in, where she came up with, I suppose a bit of backstory would help. There were some French notes made about the analytical engine, and Lovelace was going to translate them, had her own notes and things for those for Babbage. And she spent about 9 months on this, and during that time she added sort of a huge amount of detail to them. But she also came up with an algorithm for computing what's called Bernoulli numbers. I've probably pronounced it completely wrong.
I was going to say, did you learn how to pronounce that? You were having trouble earlier.
Yeah, I'm still in trouble. I
The
gave up.
Bernoulli numbers, yes.
Yeah,
Right.
well, Bernoulli. There you
I'd
go.
say Bernoulli. I would.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so she came up with this algorithm for computing, or for working that out, and for making an analytical engine calculate them. But that title of first program is debatable, really. It's I find it hard to believe that Babbage didn't, write his own programs before that for it, because obviously he's got to program his general purpose computer in some way or another, or his theoretical one, I guess it was at the time. I say that, but he did actually start building it. It just never got finished. Sounds like a binary code project.
Yeah. Hey, we finished some of our projects.
Yeah, that's true, and some of them are actually going quite well. Anyway,
big up Binary Craft. What up?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Shh. Anyway, we don't talk about Binary Craft.
I've already released a teaser trailer, so we have to finish it now.
We do. That's very true. Okay, so going back to Lovelace, since that's what we're supposed to be talking about.
Really? Oh, I thought we were talking about Babbage.
Yeah. Well, I had to give you a bit of background.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the next thing that I think is more important than the whole first program, or whether that's true or not, is what we were talking about earlier with Lovelace's Leap.
Yeah.
And this really was a complete change in thinking of what to use the analytical engine for. And there's no evidence anyone else really sort of thought of this before it. And it was that the analytical engine could be used for something other than just computing numbers in and of themselves. It could actually be used to potentially compute things like, to store and so on information otherwise encoded, so music and pictures and all sorts.
That sounds familiar. Do we use that now?
Of course. MP3s, JPEGs, whatever, you name it.
So she basically came up with what we use computers for now, and this was back in, how old was she at the time? So 1845, something like that?
Something around that. Around about 1840s, probably be a good guess. So this was a long time ago, but very, very much ahead of the time. And this sort of conceptual leap was really what I think she should be remembered for, is because that took the method of thinking about it in a completely different direction, that a general purpose computer could be used as other than just doing a whole bunch of mathematical calculations. It could be used for much more, as we do now. So she actually wrote about this in some of her notes. I'm debating whether to read it out or not. Do you want to hear it?
Yeah. One thing I just want to get, you say that she'd only become more famous recently, the whole 200 years when she wasn't even known about. Is that because of computers have actually become what she said?
Partially, I think, yes. I mean, there's no sort of definite answer to that, I don't think. But, yeah, I mean, basically it's that because, we're at a stage now where computers are ubiquitous and can do a hell of a lot, it's where her ideas are actually being, used. There's actually someone else dating back to it's work they did in the 50s, which I'll talk about another time, who had kind of a similar sort of situation. It's still quite relatively unknown, but anyway. The other thing about Lovelace is that she's held up as kind of like a, sort of female engineer or female mathematician or person who works with computers or whatever.
She's proof they exist?
Yeah, and, she was a long time before modern day as well, which is quite remarkable. I mean, at the time it was almost unheard of. But it's probably...
I mean, you did computer science. Was there many girls in your class then?
got 2 or 3 maybe.
Yeah, she was leading the way.
Yeah, and it's quite remarkable at the time, but it's probably partly due to her sort of social standing, being sort of effectively nobility.
Silver spoon and whatnot.
Yeah, that sort of thing.
That's what that phrase means, right?
I think so.
We'll go with it, yeah.
Yeah, we'll go with it. So yeah, that's pretty cool. So that was a huge sort of leap that she had in sort of thinking, and then that sort of changed things quite drastically. But it's quite strange then, because after the whole sort of analytical engine Babbage sort of era, things seemed to die down a little bit, and then sort of eventually sort of came back as technology had progressed more later on, and I'm talking sort of early 21st century now. Sorry, early 20th century.
Because we're in the early 21st century.
Yeah.
We're living in the future, man.
We are. So there's a bit of a sad end to her story, though. She died at 36 due to cancer.
That's far too young.
She's pretty young, yeah. On the other hand, Babbage lived to the grand old age of 79.
What a dick.
Hey, who's awesome.
Stole her ideas, let her die of cancer, let the physicians do bloodletting, that probably didn't help.
But he did actually have quite an interesting sort of name for her. He called her the Enchantress of Numbers.
Oh, that's quite a good name. Do you reckon he had a thing for
her? No. She was married and had like 3 kids.
Oh, by the age of 37.
And did a great mathematician as well, and her leap as well.
Yeah. You said you had a quote you wanted to read out.
Yeah, do you want to hear it?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, it's a couple of paragraphs, but it's not that long. Okay, so what she said was that the analytical engine might act upon other things beside number, were objects found whose mutual fundamental relations could be expressed by those of the abstract science of operations, and which should also be susceptible of adaptations to the action of the operating notation and mechanisms of the engine. Supposing, for instance, that the fundamental relations of pitch sound in the science of harmony and of musical composition were susceptible of such expressions and adaptations, the engine might compose elaborate and scientific pieces of music of any degree of complexity or extent. So basically she's saying that, if they could represent things such as music in a format that the machine could understand, i.e. numbers, then it could actually work with that, what we now call data.
So you're saying at its core, it would be binary.
Yeah. I like what you did there.
I thought it was pretty good. I was thinking that the whole way through.
Oh, God.
Actually, what I was trying to figure out is how old she would have been now, and it would be 198 today she would have been.
Yep, she would have been pretty old. Well, she probably wouldn't have been...
No, she wouldn't have lived this long, but I'm saying she would have been. This is her birthday, her 198th birth.
198? 190...
Yeah, 98. Yes, because 1815...
No, 197 is 2012.
You're 2012. We're living in the future.
But yeah, so that was pretty impressive for a time. So, happy Ada Lovelace Day.
It's Happy Ada Lovelace Day.
But we do have some future ones coming out. I'm going to just plug the rest of this series.
Okay, go on, plug the rest of the series. So what's next week? Next week's what?
I don't have anything planned for next week. But for December 26th, I have planned one for Charles Babbage himself.
Yeah. If the world doesn't end, of course.
Of course, if the world doesn't end on the 24th.
10 days left?
I don't even know what date it is.
Are you going to do one for Jesus' birthday on the 25th?
No. No. Do you want to know what my other one that I'm... Well, basically, I've got another one that's planned for April next year, but that's a long way off, so I might actually do it earlier, and then just reference back to it at the time.
You were saying February. Why specifically February?
April rather than February, because I mixed up the month in which the person was born and died.
Who is the person?
The guy is called Claude Shannon, and most people, to sound really hipster, have probably never heard of him. Mm-hmm. But his work was quite phenomenal. Basically, he's known as the father of information theory, and he came up with the idea that information could be transmitted. He worked for...
teaser, don't give them everything.
I'm not.
Okay.
But basically, he worked for people like MIT and Bell Rogers and so on, and he put down all the groundwork that is the reason that we can actually transmit and relay information today.
That's pretty cool.
And he's quite unknown as people go. But his sort of what he did is just phenomenal, and we wouldn't live in the world we live in now, or at least not yet, if it weren't for him.
So thanks to Ada and this guy,
Claude
we're doing pretty well.
and Charles Babbage.
And Babbage, can't forget
Yeah,
Babbage.
and we've already had Turing and Tesla, although Tesla's not really computation, but
Still
it's
badass.
still cool. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, check out next week for the surprise one that Dave's not going to tell us about, but totally is going to post.
There's no guarantee that'll be next week. We'll see
There
if it goes.
Right, yeah, so tune in next time. Bye.
Cheers.